Starting recording now, and 3, 2, 1.
The Broken Brain.
The rhino is wailing. That's right, the rhino is wailing. That will only make sense if you're watching this as a video. Hello, YouTube Nation, as well as all you brainiacs out there over the iTunes and whatever other podcast things you do. iTunes gets the top billing, people. I don't make the rules. Welcome to The Broken Brain. I'm Dwight Hurst, your psychotherapist, your host, and Encyclopedia Brand superfan for the duration of this episode. This episode of the podcast is a podcast mini.
Podcast Mini is a podcast with a 7.9-inch screen.
Smaller, but just as awesome. We're going to be talking about anxiety management for a bit. That's right. Today's title, I should say, title and topic would be 2 short tips for anxiety. Hang on, guys. Short? Really? Is that a joke? Did we do that? Did I do that? Did Lee put you up to that? Is that a short joke? I'm not sensitive here, but come on. 2 short tips for anxiety, I ask you. All right, so here we are. We're going to do that now. We're going to talk about the short tips for anxiety. There's a couple of them. 2 of them, as a matter of fact, that we are going to talk about. Where is it? Here it is. There we are. So, those of you watching on the video, you're now seeing this short tip for anxiety coming up right now. All right, brief tips for anxiety. Number 1, make a plan. Act 1, make a plan. All right, that's my eyeglass. Did you like that? Make a plan. Number 1 is make a plan. If you're an anxious person, and I pray that you are, well, no, sorry about that. I didn't mean to bring that upon you, but I identify with you. I'm an anxious person, and I love working with anxiety. I love talking about anxiety. Love it. We're Facebook friends, Anxiety and I. Making a plan is a very important part of anxiety management and actually can be a very good coping skill. I kind of got this idea a while back when I read an article called The Therapist at the Table. It was in Gourmet magazine, and I don't know the year or reference, but you can Google that. I'll try to find a link and put it up on the website too, along with this episode when this is the current episode of the minis. Yeah, anyway, it was all about actually a restaurant, and it talked about how this restaurant, Union Square in New York, I have no idea if it's still there. I've never been there, just read about it in the article. They took an active interest in the emotional well-being of their customers and their staff. In fact, they sort of were pioneering a new thing in customer service where they were saying everyone who comes in here, whether they work here or whether they're a customer, should feel taken care of and feel special and feel wonderful, or wunderbar in German. I don't know who was German. I just added that. So what they did is they started out by getting all the staff together, and they made a plan for what apparently is a food server's worst nightmare. They got them together and they said, okay, what happens if you spill food on somebody? And everyone's like, oh, well, die? I don't know. The world is over. I get fired. You tell me. And the plan was, here's what we're going to do. If you spill food on someone, we will back you up. We will support you. What you do is you go, oh, I'm sorry. And then you get away from the person, basically. And everyone else is kind of attuned to this to know what's going on so they can be there and support each other. And the concierge, I believe, or maybe it's maitre d' in a restaurant. I don't know the industry that well. Sorry about that. We'll move right in, and they will start with the plan. The plan is, hey, we're so sorry that happened to you. I'm going to help you out here. The person who didn't spill food on you is now in your face helping you, instead of the person who did spill food on you, who then gets to withdraw for a moment. They swoop in. Someone else can come over and say, let's clean you up. We actually have a little stack of gift certificates to local dry cleaners that can take care of your clothing if there's any stains. Of course, we'll comp your meal, whatever, blah, 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 to make you happy. And then once you're feeling a little well cared for, the offending food server can kind of swoop back in, say, I'm so sorry. Oh, and you have an opportunity to kind of go through a process. So they had a plan for their worst possible fear. And for those of us who are anxious people, I would suggest that it actually can be useful to ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that can happen that I'm worried about? This is particularly effective if you have a recurring anxiety. If you have anxiety about the same type of thing that happens again and again, that's sort of the definition of the word recurring. So what you do is make a plan for that thing. Say, what's the worst Papa Smurf thing that can happen to me that I'm worried about? And what would I do if that happened? You can engage the help of others if that's appropriate. If it's at college, you could talk to your professor or other students who may have been there longer. If it's something that comes up at work, you could talk to coworkers. If it's something that comes up at your I don't know, your religious community or your bowling league or your a dart throwing championship, or whatever it is, that there are probably people who have been there and maybe thought about that problem. So making an effective plan that's realistic and a way to deal with what might be going on and prepare can help you to prepare for that worst possible outcome, that type of fear. I have a good friend of mine, Mike Fitch. You might know him if you're a listener to the podcast. You do know him as my frequent co-host on the podcast. And he likes to talk about what he calls the third side of the coin, and that's a big part of anxiety, is worrying about things that aren't that likely. The third side of the coin, if you think of a coin, if I had any money, I'd show. Oh, here we go. So if you think of a coin, those YouTubers here are seeing this right now, live. I don't know if anyone's watching it right now, but see this quarter? It's got a heads, it's got a tails. If you flip a coin, nobody ever says to you, oh my gosh, I just hit myself with the coin. Nobody ever says to you, there we go, that's the coin experience for you listening. No one ever calls out sides. They always call out heads or tails. If you called out sides, people would think you were crazy. Although, if you call out sides every single time until it finally happens, sometime 100 years from now when it lands on its ridged side and stays there, everyone's going to think you're a wizard. They'll forget all the times that you were wrong. So just a little life hack to sound crazy until they think you're a wizard. Those are good outcomes. No one ever says that. Anxiety tells you it will be the third side. In other words, not only will I spill food on a customer, they will hate me. I will never work again. My life will be over. Well, probably a little dramatic from just spilling food. So anyway, so making a plan, though, can prepare you for that kind of a thing when something that's kind of like your worst fear happens, which is an anxiety trigger. Second brief tip for anxiety. What type of problem is this? Learn to ask yourself, am I having a practical problem or an anxiety problem? What does that mean? Anxiety it always seems practical. I always like to say anxiety is the magnifying glass that makes everything feel worse. And magnifying glasses work best when you hold them over things that really exist. Try it sometime. Hold it over something that doesn't exist. It won't make it any bigger because it's not there. The magnifying glass works better if you hold it on something like, say, a plastic rhino or something that, it'll make it look bigger. Anxiety makes all problems seem bigger. The third side of the coin is definitely going to happen, the worst possible scenario. And asking yourself, what's the real problem? Is the problem the thing under the magnifying glass, or is it the magnifying glass? We just did an episode that's going to be coming out over the iTunes and the podcasting. It's an audio episode where we interviewed Dr. Mel Paul and Dr. Andrew Frost from Intermountain Healthcare here locally. They're both pain experts. We talk about chronic pain management and the cognitive, emotional elements of pain management. And they both talk about this idea of, are you having a pain problem, or are you having an actual back problem, or whatever the part of your body is that's in pain? That those are two different problems. And having a practical problem is different than having an anxiety problem. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have both. It's a real thing. You might spill food on someone. But then again, if I can't go to work and I quit my job because of the fear of spilling food on someone, that's an anxiety problem. And asking yourself, is this a practical thing that's actually happening right now? Or is it something that I'm just worried about that hasn't happened yet, that could happen, and I'm super worried about it? They're different. And if you come up with the fact that it's an anxiety problem, then you can start doing things like trying to calm yourself. If it comes up where it's a practical problem, you can ask yourself, what do I do? We've talked before, and we will again, about lots of things that people can do to calm themselves in anxiety, but that's not the purpose of today's episode. But that's what you do if an anxiety problem. The response for anxiety that will be the cure is calming yourself down. The response for a practical problem is doing what you can about the problem. One of the ways to tell is if you say to yourself, no, it's a practical problem. I know it's a real problem. I know it's a real problem. And then you think about a solution and you either can't think at all, or think of a solution and it's not good enough, and I really am only focused on the parts that I cannot control. That's an anxiety problem. That's when you need to calm. Practical problem is there's something I can do and I will do that, and that makes me feel better. So you can tell by what makes you feel better. It's always a good idea to calm yourself first. They've done some studies that show that, for example, if you're going to take a test, you're better off sitting down, closing your eyes, and meditatively breathing, or just taking some deep calming breaths for a couple minutes before the test than you are cramming right before a test. If you cram right before a test, your memory will, maybe not remember what you're studying 10 minutes before the test. But if you meditate or just breathe deeply and calm down, you're actually likely to score higher on the test, more so than if you cram right before the test. So calming yourself down is actually always a good response. And I will say this, if you ever think to yourself, I can't take 5 minutes to close my eyes and breathe deeply and try to calm down. I just can't. I can't even take 1 minute to do that. Then it's probably an anxiety problem and you probably should do that. So those are a couple things you can think about when it comes to the world of anxiety. Thanks for listening. This is fun to connect with you guys this way. Please feel free, if you're watching this on YouTube, to subscribe to the Broken Brain Podcast YouTube channel. You can also stay on this channel and look at some of the videos we're doing about dialectical behavioral therapy skills. You can also listen to The Broken Brain over iTunes or Stitcher or any of the fun, podcast apps that exist, Podbay, a couple others that are out there. If you have a podcasting app and you can't find us, shoot me an email at dwighthurst@gmail.com. I'll get that fixed and we'll get that uploaded to you. You can always go to dwighthurst.com/podcast and hear it there. We are in the final days of September. Well, not the final, it's about half over. But if you want and you're interested in storytelling and writing, we are also sponsoring a short story contest that you can find out about on the website, dwighthurst.com. Just click on contest or go to dwighthurst.com/contest. I've said my own name as the website address several times now, and so I'm tired of it. Check that out if you're interested. There's some prizes and things. And so lots of fun things going on. We're revamping some of the services and products on our website over the next couple weeks. You should check that out. I'll let you know when it's done. Thanks again for listening /watching/listening. As I've always said, it's fun to listen to the podcast and try to sync it up with the video, or play them both at full volume, turn on Wizard of Oz, mute it, see what happens. You never know. It worked for Pink Floyd, right? Anyway, have a great day, Brainiacs. Love y'all, and happy Thursday, maybe? Friday?